Okay, Chattering Bone. I was commissioned to make this by somebody on Reddit. They reached out to me and I modeled this and then printed it and turned it into a prop in a little over a month, I'd say. This was the model. I actually don't have the gun anymore. I already mailed it off to him, but this is what it looked like at the end. And I'll show you the process I took from naming the pieces, giving you a little tour of them, to sanding and then priming and painting, and then some of the airbrush stuff I used, as well as some of the other techniques that I got in on this project. So stick around, hope you like it, drop any comments down below, and enjoy. So before I assembled the whole prop, while I still had it in a bunch of pieces, I wanted to run you through the names of all the pieces here, just so you know what's what. We're gonna start at this end. This is the barrel. It sits in this orientation. It has a rectangular cutout here because it has the barrel peg will connect it to body one right here. This body one piece, I'm gonna flip it up on its end for a second here. There are these two little pieces, the lower and upper metal bolt. The one that's skinny and has the overhang here, that's the one that goes on the bottom. And the one on the upper portion sits on the top there. Kept those separate just because these are meant to be a chrome color and it would be a lot easier just to paint them separately and glue them on afterwards rather than having to deal with them in that tiny little area. Each of the body pieces, again this is body one, have a rectangular cutout like this, and this body peg will slot in there. It's the same size for all of them, they're all connected with the same piece, so you'll need to print out 3 of those body pegs to assemble the whole thing. This is body 2. It has the gold metal band. This is the left one. There's going to be a right one that sticks on the other side. Again, same kind of thing. This needs to be a different color, so just easier to print it out separate and then paint it and just glue it on at the end rather than having to deal with the colors in there. Down below we have the hand guard, which attaches up here, as well as inside of the handle, which is this piece. This is the trigger. Doesn't move or anything, but it does connect to the inside of this little crevice of the handle. All this kind of glues to the bottom of the body pieces. Again, body 2, this is now body 3, and this is body 4. Same peg system. This is the rear scope. Looks like this. Called it the rear because this piece sits a little further to the back. And then this is the front scope, which is just a circle, and it sits in, I believe, this orientation on top of the rear scope, but it kind of rolls around for now. This is the magazine. It slots into the crevice at the bottom of body 4. It's a little bit of a tight fit, so make sure you sand this down well, and it should slide in real nice. And then at the end is the buttstock. So that's all the pieces. All in all, the total length of the whole thing when it's assembled is about 42 inches long. So it's pretty big, but this is what all the pieces look like when they're separate. Sanding. Nobody likes it. In my last video, I explained that I typically go over my pieces with 100 grit sandpaper and then again with 220 before I put any primer on them. You can totally still do that, but I wanted to change it up a little bit for this project. I actually went out and bought Black & Decker mouse sander for about 40 bucks off Amazon. I'll link it down below. I remember seeing these recommended by other guys. Galactic Armory, he makes Mandalorian helmets and stuff. He really hyped those up. I didn't know if it'd be worth it or not, and wow, was it ever worth it. Sanding all these pieces probably would have taken me about 2.5 hours outside in the heat. I live in Arizona. It's not fun to sit outside for that long. Doing everything, all the pieces, took me about 25-30 minutes to go over it twice. I bought some extra pads for the mouse sander because that only came with 2 sheets. This goes all the way down to 40 grit and all the way up to 240. I used the 80 over everything originally just to rough it up, get rid of the layer lines. You can still see a little bit of them here, but I went over everything again with the 240 grit. And so this is one of the interior pegs, you remember it from the shoot. I don't need to sand this piece, but if I run my fingernail along the layer lines, you can kind of hear the ridges that it creates. I'm not sure if you're able to pick it up or not, but there are ridges. It might look smooth, but there's actually quite a lot there. Now this piece I've done in the 80 and in the 240, and here's what it sounds like. This is way smoother than I would ever be able to get by hand sanding it with even the 220 or the 400. Doing it this way might actually prevent me from having to use Bondo on all the pieces, which is going to save me a lot more time because I have to do that outside. I do have a video, a little time lapse of me doing the sanding so you can see what that's like. Once that's done though, I'm going to probably either use a combination of hot glue or JB Weld. I'm running a little low on that, so it'll probably be hot glue to combine the pieces, and then I'm going to use cheap soldering iron. I got this off Amazon for like 10, 12 bucks, just to melt the seams together, and then I'll probably use the mouse sander again to knock those down just to keep it smooth. But yeah, I'll show you what that happens.
Alright, so I just wanted to film a quick time lapse of me assembling the gun. I ended up settling on using hot glue to put all the pieces together with the pegs. I had JB Weld, just not enough for the project, and everything held together just fine with the hot glue. Didn't have any issues with that. I did end up keeping the barrel piece as well as the buttstock separate from the rest of the main body of the gun until later on, because I just figured it'd be easier to paint them because they're going to be a different color besides the main body. Anyway, so I just kept them separate and then glued them on towards the end once I had everything painted. You can see, just make sure you firmly press everything together if you're going to use hot glue. JB Weld or anything like that would probably be better, but this worked just fine for me. Afterwards, I'm going to show you how I did the welding of the various pieces together with some filament just to fill in those seams. Okay, so just a quick time lapse here of me doing the welding. Welding of the PLA here. What you need is a little soldering iron, about a cheap one, and a mask. Ideally, a respirator would be perfect. I'm using a different colored filament here, just mostly for the effect. You can use whatever you want to do this. What I'm essentially doing is taking the hot end of the soldering iron and melting the plastic into place. You can see as I hold this up, you're essentially taking the plastic and just melting it into the crevice and then trying to smooth it out with the soldering iron so it fills in as much of the seam as possible but doesn't really build up anything on top. I did go over all the seams afterwards with the mouse tool just to further sand those edges down. You really want to use the soldering iron here as much as you can without melting the base body underneath, because this is hot. Be careful when you're doing this kind of stuff. There's some plastic fumes. Make sure you're in a well ventilated area. But I did this around the entire section of the gun. Everywhere that there was a seam, essentially I just melted some plastic into it, essentially fusing the two pieces together to create a stronger bond and also to fill that crevice.
Okay, so painting. I originally had already done this piece over. This was the buttstock. I just taped it up with some masking tape here. Originally, I've been using this frog tape, just the green stuff. I have had some issues in the past with it leaving weird marks from the glue on the piece, so I swapped to this delicate surface, the yellow frog tape. I'll let you guys know at the end if it's worth it or not. It was a little bit more expensive, but figured I would try it out for this project. So like I said, I'd already painted this bone, attempt with a paint that I had found online, in a tutorial on how to do bone. It's called Raw Sienna, and this Academy acrylic paint. Here's a bit of it. It's actually quite a bit lighter than it looks in the on the tube. So it ended up looking a little bit kind of orange almost, and it didn't really look right. It looked more coffee stained on the piece rather than, old bone. I realized actually in the back of my little paint collection, I had this unbleached titanium Liquitex. I think I got it at Michael's. I'd actually done it for a project where I made a little Nittany Lion shrine. I went to Penn State, it was the closest I could find to like a limestone. So I think this is actually going to give a much better effect on there than the Raw Sienna did. So what I had done in the past, I'm doing it again, put a little bit in a cup, a little bit of water, kind of mix it up. You're going to want a couple pieces of paper towel, ideally one that's wet in case you make a big mistake and need to wipe off a lot, and then a couple dry ones just to kind of dab the paint and get the kind of bone aged effect. So I'm just going to take a little bit on my brush here, It's not too wet. It's not too thick. And yeah, this is probably going to end up being a much better color than the sienna. It just looked orange. Like, it was kind of gross. It looked a little bit more, you know, I probably could use it for like a bone thing, but it just looked strange. And my technique is basically put it on, kind of dab it around with a paper towel. My original kind of reference image was actually like a little Home Depot, you know, skeleton you hang in your lawn for Halloween. Here's a closer shot. You can kind of see it's, you know, when you dab it, it's not quite as dark as what the actual paint looks like, especially when it's watered down. And then when you dab it around, it makes it even lighter. This is a matte white base coat as well. Oh, and one other thing before I stop, I wanted to show you the little pieces, like the metallic end bolts, and then the gold, the bands. I wanted to show you the paint I used for that. So the gold was this metallic Rust-Oleum bright gold, and then the silver was this metallic finish Rust-Oleum as well, kind of like a chrome. You probably could do these in a gold as well. You probably could do it all in a gold if you didn't want to buy another can of paint just for these two little pieces, but I already had the gold laying around, so it wasn't that big of a deal to buy another can of paint. But I'm going to keep doing this to this piece, and then I have the hand guard as well. I did a respray on them, so they're just drying outside. But I'm going to finish this piece up. Just another tip, though, is just do little sections at a time, and don't go too heavy with the paint mixture, because you know you can always take it off. You can always put more on, but it's a lot harder to take it off. I mean, you can, like I had to do a respray of the base coat over top and, you know, sand it all down, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. So if you don't want to waste your time, just take your time. I guess it's a good life lesson in general. But yeah, I'll finish this piece up here and just kind of, luckily this isn't a very precise, you know, process. You just kind of put it on, dab it off, put a little more on if you think you need it, but I might only do the one coat. I might do a second one if it's looking a little, you know, light in some places. I don't want it to look perfectly white. This is supposed to be kind of aged bone as it is, but with this color, it was just way too orange. It looked too Halloween almost, kind of like a pumpkin. So that's looking much better. I might do another coat just to kind of make it a little bit more noticeable that it's not just white. At the end of this, for these pieces, I am going to put like a matte clear coat on it just to kind of protect it and make it, you know, not too shiny, because it's not supposed to look shiny. It's, you know, old bone after all. But liking how that looks for now. Again, the paint was called Unbleached Titanium. I got this at like Michael's, and yeah, much better than the sienna I was using before. So that's how I did the bone. Okay, airbrushing. I'm not an airbrushing expert. Bought some super cheap airbrush. It's not even worth putting on camera. Off of Amazon. It doesn't have a tank on it. It just goes straight to the compressor, to the sprayer. So every time I spray air, that kicks on, and it's super annoying. So I'll probably time lapse the rest of this. But I'm trying to emulate the purple color on the gun. I made this splotch, you know, with on a previous project. I'll throw a picture of that up. There was a purple, a blue, and I did a mixture of both in the middle. The purple was this Liquitex dioxazine purple. Got it at Michael's. The blue was this Tamiya X13 metallic blue paint. It's actually really good, but the middle color was kind of the best. So I'm probably going to do a base coat of purple everywhere, and then a bit of this darker purple on some of the other spots to create that darker effect. I have this little, you know, kind of hobby tool knife. I've been practice cutting into this random wooden block. I'm going to practice on this because I think what I'm going to do for the light blue lines on it is score a few lines into the plastic and then do paint fill with kind of a light blue paint. I haven't bought it yet. Other than that, there's a couple other paints I have. Besides that, I'm using a reducer with the purple to make it a little less intense. That came with the kit. Make sure you have gloves, a mask, ideally a respirator, and yeah, let's paint. So you join me after a quick color flush to the blue. Apparently I didn't hit the record button when I was painting the blue. So this is how it turned out. I can probably add a little bit more to the other side. The original side that had all the scuffs, I might have gone a bit too dark with the purple because it made the piece quite dark overall compared to some of the other ones. But the idea with the blue, again, it's that X13 Tamiya paint with a bit of reducer in it. There's not really a pattern to do. It's just kind of meant to bring a little bit of a highlight and a bit of a shimmer once you add that clear coat in, so it's not just straight up purple. This is kind of what it looks like just on itself, but obviously on top of the purple it comes out a little darker. I'll put a couple, this bit's a bit light here, I'll add a little bit of paint to that portion. But other than that, this is how it's going to look before I clear coat it. Oh, and I call this color, with the purple and the blue, I call this Strike Playlist Blueberry, by the way. Figured that was the most fitting name I could put for a color that looked like this. So, dubbed by that, Strike Playlist Blueberry, there you have it. And now let's clear coat this, and then we're gonna break out the Dremel, and I'll show you guys how I did the lines on all the other pieces. But after I did the purple and the blue, I did a gloss clear coat all over it, and I think with the matte clear coat on the bone and the gloss on the purple, it really makes it pop, and it's I really like how it turned out. It looks quite good. Now to do these lines, originally I had planned on using a little scoring tool to kind of carve lines into the pieces and then paint fill them. When I did that, the lines really weren't that deep nor wide, so when I put paint in the line, you can see this line has a little bit of fill in it. You really couldn't tell that there was any paint in there. The lines were so thin. So I went on Amazon, bought this tiny Dremel, just a cheap one, used the smallest head on it that it came with, and set it up to setting 5. That's what it recommended for plastic. So I just tried practicing up here in the upper portion of the clip. The tape here, everything above the tape is hidden inside the gun, so I'm using this as a little practice area, especially since I had to repaint this part. Anyway, this is what it looked like, not gloss, by the way, and that's what the gloss looks like. So I really think it added to the piece. But a couple tips, just take your time with these lines. If you lean into it too much, it can kind of make the surface rough, and then you're gonna have to sand again, and you're gonna wreck the paint job underneath. So I did a couple practice lines. I did one on the other side as well here. Every time I added paint, I guess I'll show you the paint. I got this Liquitex light blue permanent to do that. I tried watering it down. I think I probably added a bit too much water to the mixture, because every time I went to wipe it off with a wet paper towel, as you can see by this, there's a lot of paint on that, and not much of it stayed in the crevice. So I can either use a deeper or a larger head on this, use drier paint with less water in the mixture, or a combination of both. So I'm gonna practice a few more times and then and see where we go from there. All right, Dremel lines are all cut in to the clip here. I did the rest off camera just because it's a lot to see the same thing. I took a little bit of the light blue permanent Liquitex, just mixed it in with some water in a cup. Really not that much paint. There's just, most of that's actually dried paint from doing the rest of the gun. And then I have my thinnest brush, and it's just thin enough, and I made the channels just wide enough that the entire, I guess bristles, I don't know what they're called, can fit inside of each of the channels. So I'm just gonna, take your time, take my time, and do the lines, and then, not worry, only wipe it away if I, miss and get some outside of the lines. Do your best, preschool impersonation of coloring within the lines, and you'll be done with this in no time, but just take your time. All right, here's the finished chattering bone. Figured I would just give you guys a close-up video from front to back of some of the details in the bone painting here. The gloss you can really see reflecting off the light above, and then the scope, how that sits. I'll pick this up for a second. You can see the chrome down below, the purple in the middle, and then the gold on the top portion. Moving along to the handle and the handguard with the trigger in there, and then the gold band. I really like how these shine. That paint really worked out well. This is just moving along with the first barrel portion, and then you have the two little chrome bolts in there. They just sit in there nicely. But overall, really happy with how it turned out. Thank you to the guy who commissioned me for make this for him. Had a lot of fun making it. And yeah, this is what it looks like up close. All right, so here's the finished product. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I really like the difference in the contrast between the matte colored bone and then the glossy purple sections. Even to the front, where you can see those two little chrome bits I entered, the buttstock back here. Just overall, really happy. It probably took me about a month in total from modeling it, or getting the request to modeling it, printing it all out. It took about a week of just printing time. I only have one Ender 3 V2. And the longest part is the sanding and the painting. That always takes the longest portion. But all in all, really happy with how it turned out. Super fun. I'll leave the files in the description down below if you want to check out this project for yourself. If you want to get in touch with me about getting anything done for yourself, I'll leave my contact info down below as well. And other than that, thank you for watching, and have a nice rest of your day.